Um, so this is a continuation of the first family, the family of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we know about his relatives, this completes our knowledge of the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we understand in a holistic, wholesome manner the life and times of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also we should remind ourselves or learn that most of the Quran came down in response to incidents that happened in the life of the Prophet ﷺ or his Sahaba or his family. And in this tonight's segment, inshallah ta'ala, I will mention two incidents which laid down the fiqhi ruling about hajj, one of the arkan of hajj, and also the veiling of women, and that pertains to the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Momineen, Sauda Bint Zam'a radiallahu anha. I have briefly mentioned her life with regards to the Prophet ﷺ marrying her after the death of Khadija radiallahu anha. And who is Sauda Bint Zam'a radiallahu anha? So she was married to a person named Ekram bin Amr. Sakran was the brother of Suhail bin Amr. Suhail bin Amr, perhaps you remember that he is the person who represented the Quraysh during the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So he was not a Muslim at the time, but he negotiated on behalf of the Quraysh. And when the Prophet ﷺ saw Suhail, he took a good omen that his name comes from the word Sahel, meaning easy. So the treaty will be easy, and that's what happened. So she was from the tribe of Banu Najjar. Banu Najjar are the family of the great-grandmother of the Prophet ﷺ, Hashim's wife, Salma bint Amr in Medina. So she has ties to Medina, and she is also from the clan of Khazraj. Khazraj is a very important qabila because Aus and Khazraj were two Ansari tribes that came in the battle of in the Bay'ah of Aqaba, the pledge of Aqaba 1 and 2, two pledges of Aqaba. Most of those who pledged allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ, even before Hijrah, they were from the Khazraj. And these were the larger of the two tribes. Aus was a smaller, and Khazraj was larger tribe. So Sakran and Sauda radiallahu anha, they made hijrah to Abyssinia. But then some say Sakran died in Abyssinia or on the way back to Mecca. So she was left as a widow, and the Prophet ﷺ honored her by marrying her because she needed this vital support in this male chauvinistic society. So the Prophet ﷺ married her, and also she served as the motherly figure for the young children of the Prophet ﷺ because Khadija radiallahu anha had died. Now, Aisha radiallahu anha said that Sauda, who was radiallahu anha, she was very tall and a heavy-set lady, and she was older. So she had given her days and nights gifted to Aisha radiallahu anha because the Prophet ﷺ had designated a day and a night to each of his wives, and he will take turns because he wants to do justice with them. So Sauda radiallahu anha, because she is older, she gifted her nights and days to Aisha radiallahu anha. By the way, when the Prophet ﷺ was ill, in his final illness, he was coming in and out of consciousness, and when he came into consciousness, he asked, "Where will I be tonight?" And they said, "You will be at this wife's house." Then, "Where will I be next? And where will I be next?" And they realized that he wants to be with Aisha radiallahu anha, his favorite wife at the time. So they all donated or gifted their nights to Aisha radiallahu anha, and that's where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. So Aisha radiallahu anha said that Sauda radiallahu, this is the ruling here. Sauda radiallahu anha asked the Prophet ﷺ if she could leave Muzdalifah during Hajj before the dawn, because she is slower when she walks back to Mina. She's slower, she's heavier. And so the Prophet ﷺ gave her permission that you can leave early. And so this hadith is used by jurists as evidence that the weak, the elderly, and women are allowed to leave Muzdalifah early after midnight before the rush builds up in the morning, the Hujjaj leaving to Mina. Now, another incident that gave us some ruling, back in the day of the Prophet ﷺ, you'll be surprised if you don't already know, people didn't have bathrooms in their homes. This is not something they would consider building in their home. This is najasa, no bathrooms. So people will go out to relieve themselves. And the women will typically go out in the night, in the evening, when the sun set, at the dusk, they will go out. So it is said that Sauda radiallahu anha went out, and as she was going, Umar radiallahu anhu saw her, and he recognized her because of her height. So he said, and this hadith is narrated by Sauda radiallahu anha herself. So he said, by Allah, Sauda, you cannot hide yourself from us. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him what had happened. And then the Prophet ﷺ went into a trance. When wahi came to the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he would go into a trance. When he came out of it, he said, Allah has granted, permission has been given to you women to go out for your needs. This is in Bukhari. So why is this hadith significant? Because it establishes that women are permitted to go out for their natural and personal needs, even after the command of hijab was revealed. You have necessity. And from that, the jurists, the fuqaha have given more rulings. What about going to work? If you don't have a husband, you have to feed your family. Can you go out? Women can go out to work. So that's one point. The other point is that it is directly tied to the revelation of the verse of hijab in Surah Al-Ahzab. Sauda radiallahu anha's case is part of the circumstances that clarified the scope of the hijab injunction. So the Quran says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu qul li azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minina yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihin dhalika adna an yu'rafna fala yudhain wa kana Allahu ghafurur rahima. O Prophet, tell your wives, your daughters, and the women of the believers to draw over themselves their jalabib, this outer garment that is more suitable, so that they will be recognized. They will be recognized from the kuffar that these are muhsanat, these are believing women. They will be recognized and not be harmed. And Allah is ever forgiving, most merciful. So what is the context of this? So the hypocrites and the troublemakers, it's not just today, even back then, because men have a nature, certain nature, right? So they would harass women in the darkness when they came out to relieve themselves, go out. So having jalabib meant that they distinguished themselves from the slave women who were an easy target for the hypocrites and the troublemakers. So these are some of the contexts from the life of Sauda radiallahu anha, and these rulings still apply to us today. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to send down certain revelations, certain ahkam for us. There is a significant difference among the scholars as to when Sauda radiallahu anha died. Some say she died in the end of Umar radiallahu anhu's khilafah, which is almost 22nd year of Hijrah. Others place it in 54 years. So there's a big gap, 22 and 54. And they say those who hold this opinion, they say that she died under the caliphate of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. But they agree that she is buried in Jannatul Baqiyah. And may Allah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless her and raise her ranks, Momineen Sauda Bint Zam'a radiyallahu anha. And all of these women, ladies who were married to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one thing we have to remember, not only that Allah told us in the Quran that they are like your mothers, the Ummahatul Momineen, they were not allowed to marry anyone after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because they will be his wives in Jannah, in the eternal companionship in Al-Firdausul A'la. So inshallah, next week we will be talking about Sayyida Aisha radiyallahu anha, and because there is so much to share about her, probably this will be in 3 parts. Part 1, 2, and 3. بإذن ta'ala. Jazakallahu khaira. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.